thank you all for being here this morning with your beautiful faces and beautiful smiles coming out. And I am just doubly excited about today's edition of our Prose and Pages author series. I'm excited about our author and our moderator. And I want to just give some quick thanks out as we are beginning. I want to thank, first of all, my staff for the nourishment that they have provided. They just get right in there and help me each time we do this. Really hard working hard ladies. Carrie's in the back. Carrie, I want you to wave your hand because I want to acknowledge you, Carrie. Carrie just received a Legacy Award at our library conference this week for 39 years of service. How about that? Yes. And Miss Frida is somewhere around here. She received a Legacy Award as well for 46 years of service. Yeah. All right. And a young man that you see videoing, he probably will kill me for acknowledging him, but I have to give him thanks. Our digital studio and media coordinator, Mr. Julian Gooden. He's housed at our Wando Mount Pleasant branch, so I invite you all to check him out, check out his studio, check out the programs that he does. He's a storyteller, he's a documentarian, he's a producer, so thank you, Julian. All right, our special guest, and gentlemen, I'm going to ask your apologies before I start because both of you have such illustrious litany of offices that you have held. So if I forget anything, please forgive me. But our moderator today is Mr. Charles Hawk Mills. Now, I hope you'll tell us today where the Hawk came from. He is a retired Army colonel, 4 years retired now, but before that he was a transitioning veteran strategic leader and operations manager with the U.S. Army. He has held titles such as Director of War Games Center. He was a fire support coordinator. He was a battalion commander, a chief officer, a brigade commander. But I'm sure most dear to him is that he is also a husband, a father, and a grandfather, and a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. So thank you, Mr. Mills, for being with us. Yes. And our featured author today is Dr. Darrel W. Grisby. He has a PhD in biblical counseling. He is the founder and president of Kingdom Marriage and Family Evangelistic Ministries. He's a former fiscal officer, retired accounts division with the U.S. Department of State. He is also retired U.S. Air Force. He served from 1974 to 1999, and now he has added to his litany of titles. He is an author and public speaker. He too is also a husband, father, and grandfather. And Dr. Grisby, we're excited to have you here talking about the lives that sometimes go unnoticed and the history that goes unnoticed and those that are unsung and underrated. So thank you for coming, and we're going to hear you today talk about your work. We still aim high. I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Mills.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moore, and I want to thank you for the invite, and what a pleasure and honor to spend some time. I'm just going to call you Doc, just call you Doc as we go forward. And but before we begin, he's read a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your background in the military, sir. In 2 minutes or so, could you tell us something about who Doc is outside the uniform?
Outside of the uniform, I guess a simple explanation would be a man of God. And that's my primary role right now. Matthew 6:33 says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness.
Amen.
And everything else will be added unto me or us." So my obligation now is to continue to pursue the work that he's called me to do, and that's multifold, multifaceted, and be a husband to my lovely bride of soon to be 47 years.
Amen. Let's give a hand clap on that. 47 years.
And
47 years.
continue to assist and being a father to our two children, Danielle and Dominique, and now our grandchildren, AJ and Jasmine. And so that keeps us
Extremely busy,
extremely
I'm sure.
busy, extremely busy.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for that. And so to caveat off what you just shared with us, we're going to dig a little more about who Doc is. So if I were to write, if we were to go to a Waffle House or some place to eat, and you would turn on your radio, what station would it be on? What would you be listening to as we're traveling down Dorchester Road?
I remember, if I still have this correctly, if it was a radio station, it would probably be 1390 here, the gospel station here. And also, now, you get up a little bit, so I have Sirius XM radio now. So I would listen probably to Urban View or Watercolors.
Yeah, there it is, right
Jazz.
there. Got to put some jazz in there.
On Sirius XM radio.
Come on, you're my street right now.
And also, Urban View, Karen Hunter, and a few of the folks that speak to what's going on actually now in our society as it pertains to African Americans.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that again, sir. So, again, with your military service, as well as you like to have fun, you enjoy music, because I know you've done a little bit of dabbling in some music. We'll touch on that later.
Okay.
But now I'm going to start off with a quote, one of my favorite quotes, and then we're going to go into the structure of how you've written the book. And congratulations as well for a wonderful accomplishment and a wonderful read. But if I were to say this to you, and again, this is one of my favorite quotes, you're not leading. And this is what the quote states. You're not leading unless you're in a perpetual state of uncomfortability. So when I say that to you, what kind of flows in your spirit with that? You're not leading unless you're in a perpetual state of uncomfortability.
Well,
and I ask because it's huge. You've done some great work here. You've covered a whole lot of ground between the birth of the United States Air Force, and I'm not going to hold that against you, of course, because I'm Army. I'm not going to do that. But leadership. This is what you talk about, the essence of what that is in very, very difficult times. So that's why I asked the question.
Well, I came in under uncomfortable times. 1974, I was a senior in high school, 17 years old. And all the unrest that was going on throughout the land, I knew I would not live my life in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I knew there was another place and another time for me to live in. And I left home at 17 and came in. Vietnam was winding down. And I became a man in the United States Air Force. My father was not present in my life at the time, which was an uncomfortability. Coming in the military with Vietnam winding down, that was uncomfortability. Moving out of a segregated environment and coming into an environment where my worldview changed from tunnel vision to panoramic in the state of one night, uncomfortability. Being supervised by folks that didn't know exactly how to address a young black man, that was uncomfortability. Training and learning that education was one of the most important factors that I had to attain if I was going to achieve in life in any capacity. That was uncomfortability. And I fought for all of that along the way. Thankfully, I had some great folks that I could point to, I can look at and view to say, this is how I want to be. And education was stressed within the young people that I came in with. And we dug hard to be able to get ourselves educated and to be able to also deal with the racism and prejudice of that particular time. Now, I have to admit, the Air Force, it was a It was a diverse service. My whole life was charted out before me if I chose the right path. But there were people that did not want to see people like me succeed. And as I rose into leadership positions, I dealt with folks that challenged my intellectual capability, that challenged my educational accomplishments, that challenged my ability to lead, which was always a source of uncomfortability. But I also believed in aiming high. So I pursued as much education, as much travel, as much accomplishment as the Air Force would allow. Now, I also believe that for me to succeed, I had to get as much out of my time in the Air Force as they got out of me. So for my 25 years, I pressed, I soldiered on, and everything that was available to me, sometimes it sounds like bragging, but I have 6 degrees. The Air Force paid for all of them.
There it is.
I have no student loans, did not have any student debt. So for everything that was offered, GI Bill, training while I was in, Air Force talent shows, anything that would challenge me, I did. And so when I left, there was nothing left undone.
Amen. Amen. Let's give him a round of applause for that. So now, there's some stats that you provided in your piece here that really touched me with respect to the number of you spoke specifically in the Air Force, but those stats are relatively similar even today in the United States Army. But let me go back let me give you some stats with respect to a father not being a part of the home. So, and these are fresh because I've spoken on this here recently, and that's why it's so fresh in my mind. But for those that are not aware, when a male grows, it doesn't matter whether it's culture, creed, or anything like that. But when a male grows up without a male or a father in the home, 65% of those males end up committing suicide. That's number one. Number two, I believe the data is 85% of those individuals that grow up in that type of environment, they do violent crime. So I want to go back to what you shared. You grew up without a father in the home.
Right.
And all the accomplishments that you've written about and what you stated and shared with us today, who was, and you can give a couple, the male mentor that drove and pushed you in the environment that you described in Baton Rouge?
In Baton Rouge?
Or whoever it was that pushed you, says, look, I'm going another way.
Okay. My elementary school principals, Principal Walker, he was the first man that I saw that was accomplished. And I said, you know what? This is someone to look at here. Now, that was through elementary school. In junior high school, in high school, there was no one present during that particular time. My father, who I got to be close with later on in life, was not present. I knew of him, but was not present. I just knew, and there was only one father that was present that I didn't even realize that I was being led by, and that was Jesus Christ. Because I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to do. The Army, what is it? West Point. I received a packet from them saying, hey, all you got to do is fill this packet out, get one of your public officials, senator, representative, or whatever, to sign off on it, and you got a free ride to West Point. And I thought about it. Vietnam was still going on. I said, no, I do not want to go in the Army. And one of my classmates, he said, look, you come to the Air Force recruiting office with me. And little did I know, he was wanting us to sign up under the buddy program, which we did. I came into the recruiter's office. He started laying out all of these things that was going to be available to me. 3 hots in a cot, uh, $300+ per month. That was my pay at that time. The GI Bill, travel, reenlistment bonuses, all of this stuff. And I said, you know what? And I started thinking, my uncle, who is in this book, he was in the Air Force during Vietnam. And he almost died because he contracted yellow fever over in Taiwan. And my mother did not tell me that the reason why she didn't want me to go, because when he contracted yellow fever, he was sterilized. So I told her at that time, I said, you can, like the Fram commercial, you can pay me now and pay me later. I say, you can sign for me now at 17 to go in, or when I'm 18, I'm going in. But either way, I'm leaving. And she signed for me in February of 1974. So it wasn't until I joined the Air Force that I started looking and seeing different individuals say, you know what, I want to do this, I want to do that. But it was no major male individual, father figure, mentor figure in my 17 years of Baton Rouge that helped direct me to my future.
That's powerful, and thank you for sharing. You know, the persistence and the resilience that you were able to, when you talk about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and because there's a lot of men who don't know Him.
Right.
Even today, it's a challenge because of the culture that we're living in right now. But through now, again, coming from 2 different generations. But I learned from this generation. Okay, and I'll share a little bit of my history. My father retired here at then Charleston Air Force Base in 1979. So came up, as an Air Force brat, moved all around the East Coast. We did not travel with him abroad. But at the time, even though we had restoration at the end of our life, my father and I, it was oil and water. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as you discussed with us and shared with us your journey, we talk about the challenges of, because you talk a lot about, accountability, DEI, and some of the experiences that you've seen on both sides, which is what I really appreciate, whether it be an officer or a non-commissioned officer. And of course, you touched a little bit on the warrant officers as well, because it's all complete as far as the family is concerned. So as you went to writing the book, in fact, when did it hit you? Says, I got to write a book. Doc, man, what are you doing? I got to write a book. When did it hit you that it was time?
Well, that's interesting because it was during all the uproar across the country about George Floyd. Okay, and at that time, 2 things happened that I witnessed that kind of caused me to start thinking, what's going on with my Air Force? And this is 22, 23 years after retirement. In my book, I make mention of, at the time, Major Daniel Walker. Okay, I saw him on 60 Minutes, and he was a esteemed F-22 fighter pilot, Air Force Academy graduate. And he was on 60 Minutes talking about he was resigning from the Air Force because of racial discrimination. A lot of folks don't know that there are not a lot of black pilots in the military. And he was one of the best. And he talked about how because of his elitism as far as flying is concerned, he was challenged a lot by the other pilots. And because the pilots that were flying at the time, the young pilots around his age, they were legacy pilots. their fathers and grandfathers and everyone else had been in the Air Force. And he said there were some things that would be done while they were flying that would endanger his life by these other pilots. And he said it got so he had to make a decision about whether or not he was going to stay in and possibly be killed among his own pilot peer group, or his mental health be damaged. And so I saw that, and then I saw General Charles C.Q. Brown, who just retired in this administration. He rose from the Secretary of the Air Force to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I saw a video of him talking about how George Floyd could have been, the other young man could have been his son that was killed. I can't think of his name right now. And he talked about some of the racial discrimination he experienced in the United States Air Force. And I said, you know what, let me take a look at what's going on. And as I started writing this book, I was able to interview Major Walker. He is now married, lives in Australia. He got out, he got his law degree through Harvard, and he's working with a high profile law firm out in California right now. So I got to interview him and talk to him. And he talked about the stress and the issues and things that he dealt with. And again, the Lord started dropping in my spirit, you know what, let me start talking to some of my former Air Force peers and others about their experiences. So I interviewed almost 100 different Air Force personnel, from generals to airmen basics, folks that had been in a year or so. And I recorded their stories because they poured in, as you see in the book there. And November 1st, 2023, 2 years ago today, this was published.
Well, so let me share. It was very inspirational because a lot of the folks that poured into the project that you put together, I've either served with, I knew or met personally. General, my dear brother, C.Q. Brown. I mean, he's my fraternity brother as well, and I met him more than a couple times, and he shared his story. And I'm with you, and I appreciate when he went on television, and that commercial.
Yes.
For an African American colonel in the Army, field artilleryman. And for those now there's a highlight to this because there's not a whole lot of African American field artillerymen in the Army, for those that served in the Army. Mm-hmm. That was powerful to me, to see C.Q. Brown sharing his story and being so passionate about it. And he wasn't just speaking to folks that looked like African Americans or black or brown. He was speaking to everyone. And that's the power in C.Q. Brown. Mm-hmm. So as the structure of the book, you weave, it's very powerful how you begin with, of course, the birth of the Air Force, which any Army, who we got Army folks out here? Yeah, and how the Air Force was birthed out of the Army. So I'm not going to cover that, so much. So, was birthed.
I saw what you did.
But it's a wonderful thing. But I really appreciate it because a lot of folks don't know. They don't know that story about. They think, oh, this Air Force has been around. No, it has not. No. And there was a process involved with that to include litigation, executive orders, et cetera, to include 9981, the Truman Order, which of course brought the African Americans as one into the military, which was a powerful moment in itself in history. Mm-hmm. So. But now, the way that you wove in history, and you dabbled into your own personal story, you wove in some more history, and then the interviews of those folks that poured in, tied in everything, with respect to the challenges that they went through. And I really appreciate the way that you structured the book in order to make sure that, one, you were teaching, for those that do not know, because, again, some more stats. Right now, today, there's less than 1% of American citizens that have actually worn the uniform. Okay, less than 1% today. So what you'll know about me, I like to take stats, and then I focus on the why. Okay, and then of course the effects that it would have on our communities. Because if you let's pull back here, World War I, World War II, the inter-service periods. You know, the baby boomers came from World War II, and they built this nation, you know, up to the point now where we're in a transition period, okay? But the greatness of our nation, the industrial period, you know, from the agrarian period to the industrial period, came from those folks that came out of World War I. That includes folks, black, brown, yellow, et cetera, et cetera. An amazing story in our American history. So you bring all that together beautifully, you know, but you woven in your story along that as well. The challenges that you've grown up. So let me share some stories with you.
Okay.
Okay, as a field artilleryman, okay, field artillery, you could be you know, when you're coming out of college, you could be an English major or whatever, but guess what? You roll up, you know, at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. I ain't never been to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I mean, and I rolled in there, and let me tell you, out of a class, anyway, there was 0.01% of black and brown that was a part of that class, because you're dealing with geometry, you're doing trigonometry, you're dealing with physics. You know, you're talking about stuff like equilibrium, yaw, the horizontal component velocity, all this stuff. I'm like, ooh-wee, but I'm a math guy because my mother was a math person. Okay. So I was comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. But as you just described, they're like, no, he's not going to make it because the attrition rate was so high, you know. Didn't appreciate either the intellect or the background that I came from. And I felt that coming through. And in Fort Sill, there was a culture that did not, at the time, this is in 1991, where they didn't really look upon us very well or favorably as being successful. In fact, the stats, if I can remember correctly, and it may still be appropriate, that most black and brown officers that matriculated in the field artillery would disappear after major. Yeah. And you cover that, you know, within the stats that but you used Air Force, but those stats are extremely similar today. Mm-hmm. In all services, because each service, and I know we all appreciate it, whether it be Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, you know, the Coast, it's a culture.
It is. It is.
It's a culture. And so, and I remember as I was growing up, my father retired as a master sergeant, but I remember, Doc, growing up that you know, because it's different today, the culture today, where I'm sure you can recall this, when you stayed on base, the base was crowded, the commissary was crowded, right. The youth center was crowded. I mean, there was always the NCO club was crowded. Yes. I mean, yes. It was all kind of stuff. You didn't have to go off base. You didn't have to. Now it's like a ghost town over there.
That's what I've heard, and that's what I've seen too.
It's a ghost town.
Yes.
But my point is this: it was a culture there. But I remember, Doc, in the community, because you know they separate the communities because of rank.
Right.
I will tell you, everyone here, that there was when I looked around, there was very few people that looked like me in my community. Mm-hmm. Very few. And I never asked my father about it, but I know that it was some challenges because, you know, he, you know, again, coming off of Vietnam, I remember him, he didn't talk a lot about it, but I could still see the pain in his eyes sometimes when he come back home and unfortunately come out in very desperate ways, you know, at home, which made things very tense. Could you talk about that a little? Because you write about the challenges going to work, that, you know, some of the challenges that you I would say experienced as you were going through. If you could share a little bit of that with us.
Well, that's interesting you say so, because the first time I was called the N-word, and I didn't put it as the N-word in my book, was by a white master sergeant that I worked for. I didn't work for him, another department. My first 4 years in the Air Force, I spent in disbursement accounting. Okay, and we were responsible for handling all the payroll payments and to vendors at Eglin Air Force Base in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. And I was working in paying and collecting, and we had to pay. I was a cashier, basically, and we had to pay people that came back from TDY, had missed paychecks, or whatever the case may be. And the military pay, who Master Sergeant William Casimir was over at that particular time, they would send payments over to the cashier, and they kept sending incorrect payments over, and we had the authority and ability to deny the payments if they were not correct. Now here I am at Airman First Class, that's two-striper at the time, and this Master Sergeant, and he had sent, one day he sent his department sent too many payments over. I put my closed sign at the cashier's cage window, and I took the payments over, and I walked into this wide open space where everybody was working in military pay. And I said, who keeps sending these payments over here incorrectly? I said, I cannot and I will not pay those anymore. A hush fell over the room. The Master Sergeant got up, and he was about as tall as Mr. Wilson right here. And he walked out to me and he said, what are you doing over here talking like this? And I said, I'm not authorized to make incorrect payments. You need to make sure these payments that come over here are correct. And he said, and we got into it right there in the middle of his office. Well, the commander called us both in the office, and I explained to him, we didn't have video at the time, I explained to him what took place, and to his credit, he did not deny it. And so at that time, social action was new in the Air Force. Social action eventually became EEO. And they said, well, we're going to, they said, well, look, we're going to have to look at you being disrespectful to a non-commissioned officer. And so I was going to be investigated. I may face charges. But what happened was, I said, well, if you do, we're going to go over the social actions and make sure that this is done correctly. They came back later on in the day and said, well, okay, we're not going to do anything to you. Okay. And me and Master Sergeant didn't have any problems after that.
Yes. So,
but it was the subtle. That was the first and only overt demonstration of racism. But it was always the subtle. You didn't get selected for different assignments and different positions, even though you were eligible for them. They always looked at me as being, well, he's smart, but he talks too much. He challenges the system too much. And so I had to learn to temper that if I was going to rise. If I was going to continue to rise up through the ranks, I had to learn to pick my battles. And so I worked for some great supervisors that were white. I worked for some ones that don't like me for whatever reason. But it all balanced out because I said, you know what? Regardless of what they do, I'm going to continue to pursue excellence in everything that I did. And thankfully, I got to give credit to my wife here because she supported me those times when I would promotion test and did not get selected. She would always encourage me and everything, and that helped a great deal. Thank you, dear, for the support all over those years, But you had to learn, and sir, I know as a colonel, you had to learn to play the game. You had to learn how to do it. And that did not change. I have to give credit to also my afterlife career. That young lady sitting right over there, Miss Valinda Payne Miller. She hired me at the U.S. State Department. And she would say when she interviewed me, say, he just was so cute in his suit. But she was always an advocate for African American men because it was not a bunch of us that worked for the U.S. Department of State in those crucial roles. That's another one right there sitting behind him. Mr. Kenny Harris. He was an accountant and also worked for the U.S. Department of State. And a lot of folks thought that we looked alike. And so they would call him Darrel, and they would call me Kenny, from time to time. But no, that's how I dealt with it. And thankfully, I was aligned with some young men who had educational pursuits in their career, and we just continued to plod along the way.
Amen. And, again, it's that resilience and of course, the opportunities and access. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, coming up as an artilleryman, now my mother, let me go back to my mother. I'm so, God rest her soul, I'm so appreciative of what she did for me. Mm-hmm. And for my brother, who also, he's a retired lieutenant colonel in the Army. Okay. He was a logistics guy. And my sister, she's an attorney in Columbia, South Carolina for Blue Cross Blue Shield. So before they both passed, they both got to see, the success and all the work that they put into us. But Mama Mills, she said, baby, she said, Charles, yes, your father is your father. But when you go out into this world, you don't see nothing but people. Never forget it, baby. And she was in the town. She spoke fluent French. She did all kind of stuff, and she used to speak it just to make me mad sometimes, But her point was this, because we grew up in that bubble of the Department of Defense in the Air Force. So I didn't care nothing about I didn't care anything about that. I just people are people. Mm-hmm. But I was slapped in the face when I got to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. The gunner department, again, as I've described, was one of it's technical, highly precise. And for those that appreciate artillery, if it ain't precise, then, you kill yourself. Mm-hmm. So, and I was very good about that. But I remember as I was going through the program, it was a 6-month program. You couldn't even speak on the platform until you went through the 6-month program. One of the best programs I've actually been a part of, and one of the most rigorous. Even college, and I've got 3 or 4 degrees behind me, but that was probably one of the toughest, experiences that I've ever had. I remember going through the program, Doc, and I was one of 2 African Americans. There was one ahead of me. We still stay in contact today. Mm-hmm. I remember while I was studying, I did not take it as serious until after this moment. 2 non-commissioned officers, E5s. This was after hours. They came in, it was one male and 1 female. Mm-hmm. And the male says, see, I told you he was here. I looked at him. I was like, oh my God. This was 1995.
Wow.
I said, I told you. That's him. That's him right there. In the gunner department platform. Situation number 2. I'm going into the office, the general, about 6'4", he was a Caucasian male, 1 star. And as I went into the elevator, he comes in and he's like, hey, how you doing? How you doing there, trooper? And I was like, I'm well, sir. How are you? He says, okay, well, what do you do here? And I told him I was a gunner instructor. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, seriously, what do you do?
Yeah.
I was like, have a good day, sir. Have a good. I knew who he was. He was the ADC, the assistant, commandant. Mm-hmm. But he said it, and I think as I was leaving, his face got red, like, oh God, And it didn't make it even funny. He saw me he had to come visit me on the platform one day as I was teaching gunnery. Mm-hmm. There was many situations like that, and so the power of resilience, which is what you're explaining here in the book is so, and you have to have someone. And most of my mentors didn't look like me. They believed in me. They saw past all the stuff. In fact, one of them told, okay, and then I'm gonna get back to the point here. Now, before I left the gunnery department platform, I was handpicked, chosen by someone that didn't look like me to become a battery commander. A battery commander is one's behind the guns, okay? Not service-oriented, but behind the guns. And make a long story short, the brigade commander called someone from Germany, bypassed the battalion commander who by named me, and brought someone from Germany in order to take that spot. It was the shot heard around Fort Sill. Wow, bypassed a gunnery instructor. I was about ready to retire. That's it for me. Enough is enough. Yeah. But that commander, he says, Charles, well, he called me Hawk. He said, Hawk, I want you to boop, and I want you to make sure that you come back here with this job and boop, and boop. And man, I'm telling you, you're going to be the boop. You know, he says, don't leave. He says, take leave, and then whatever decision you make after leave, come on back. But I made a decision to stay, Doc. And I was a headquarters battery commander, which is usually a second command after battery command. And the shot was heard around the world. I got great marks. I was heard, you know, from the Corps and this Hawk Mills guy. And next thing you know, my career took off like that. But it's because of people that didn't look like me, and because Mama Mills, how she taught me, and then, of course, those around me that believed in me that helped me to make that through. But it was access as well as opportunity. That's right. Which is what you talk about here. I'm going to read something. Okay. This is early in the book, and I thought this because I'm an opera guy, and I love Broadway, et cetera, and you mentioned Hamilton. And I'll read it not in its entirety, but Doc writes this. He says, the musical Hamilton contains a special song that continues to inspire me today. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? And it's that's one of my favorite ones too. Yes. A segment of the lyric states, every other founding father's story gets told. Every other founding father gets to grow old. But when you're gone, who remembers your name? And then he says, who tells your story? Is there someone to tell your story? So you've gathered these diamonds of information, brought it all together in a book that goes beyond race, color, creed, but you do identify the challenges that Black and Brown has gone through military service. Folks that you mentioned, you know, appropriately, the profession of arms, in the arts and military art and science. That's what we study, is a profession of arms. Most folks don't understand that being in the military, look, we just don't, this is funny, we just don't shoot people in the face. Yeah. Nope. I go to schools all the time. Well, who are you shooting? Do you shoot? You know, I say we do, but you know, there are also lawyers, there's cooks, the military is a gamut of opportunities, and it's got to be explained because folks did not grow up in your generation where they come from families that have served generations in the military. Right. That's right. So they have no idea. They just think you're just shooting people in the face. Yeah. But you bring about a different message here. Who's going to tell your story? Most of the lessons and everything that you talk about here can be applied to Fortune 100, 500 companies, etc. The resilience as well as, hey, we can do this. Another quote I want to share with you. Eric Hoffer, he's a business guy, and he says this, and I know that you'll appreciate this, Doc. He says, the world is made up of the knowers and the learners. He says, the learners will inherit the earth, while the knowers will find themselves adequately prepared for a world that no longer exists. So this is what you've done here. Yes. This is what happened. This is not some fairy tale out in Marvel community or DC community or in Hollywood. Right. This happened. And it's not just a story for folks that look like you. Right. It's for everyone. It is. Who's going to tell your story? Why do you write that? Tell us, share.
See,
I told you I was going to come at you.
yeah, you're going to,
Take your time.
who's going to tell your story? Because of growing up the way that I did, there was no legacy on which for me to fall back on. My great grandmother, who basically basically raised my brothers and I, her grandmother was a slave. But she did not leave a story of that. And so I'm a photographer, and I've taken pictures all my life because I had no pictures of myself as a baby, a child. I have nothing. And I decided early on in life that I was going to record my life. And that's what I've done all my life. She's my high school sweetheart. I have pictures and everything when we were in high school together. And that's 50-some years ago. I've known her for 54 years. I have thousands and thousands and thousands of videos and pictures and photo albums and all this other kind of stuff to record my life. And it's interesting you picked that quote. I'm in the process of writing my autobiography right now. And I'm telling my life story in 3 parts. Chapter 1, from birth to 25. Chapter 2, from 25 to 50. Chapter 3, from 50 to infinity. And my life is recorded from the earliest memory that I have. All my travels in the Air Force, all my time working in the Air Force, my time working for the State Department, the people that have impacted my life and everything. So, and one of my favorite questions is, Artie, what's one of my favorite questions? Yeah. What's your story? Have you recorded your history? Because after you're gone, and I use this example, when you go to a funeral, there will be a moment where they ask 2 or 3 people to get up and talk about the deceased. And they'll give them 2 or 3 minutes to tell what they knew of the deceased. And if you go too long, you got to pull their coattail. I've conducted funerals. As you know, I'm a minister, so I've had to get up and say, done. But that does not encapsulate all of that person's life. Now, they'll have a eulogy and they'll have a story that tells, but unless that person took time to record the intricacies of their life, everybody else goes on memories. So my goal now is to complete my autobiography by July of next year when I'll be 70 years old. And so my children's, if they ever ask about me, someone would be able to hand them my story. My story. And so when I ask people sometimes, what's your story? I really don't have a story. Yes, you do. And if you do, are you willing to tell it? Have you written it down? Can someone read your life story? Or are they going to talk about you for 2 or 3 minutes at your funeral?
So let me just break it down. There's an alpha. We all have this. We have an alpha and we have an omega. We all going home at some point in time. What you're talking about is that dash in the middle.
That's dash.
So as we close out, I want to thank you for taking the time to share with us today. It's been an honor and a pleasure to share with you and to have this dialogue. Before we close out, as we talk about writing a story, this is exactly where I wanted to go. But we got so much in common because you went all the way back to 1910 with Theodore Roosevelt in Paris, talking about the man in the arena.
Yes, sir.
And guess what? That's the first thing when you open up the cover, that's the first thing that's there. And if you will indulge me, one of my favorite portions of this, incredible piece of work. And most folks, when they quote this, when they quote it, they don't realize it comes from one of the greatest pieces of prose that he wrote in Citizens of a Republic. Citizens in a Republic. And I've got the book and I read it all the time and I highlight it. But in the story that you provide here, Doc, the credit belongs to the man who was actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds. It's obvious to me that you're striving to do the deeds, to speak not just to those black and brown folks, but to provide a story for everyone, because it's an American story.
Yes.
And it's the power of America that as we go through, your story will touch others as it has touched me as I've read. And it's encouraging to know that as you've done in encouraging the generation behind you, that it gives us enough resilience to continue to pass on the torch as we move back. So God bless you. Thank you all for your time and your efforts. This has been such a pleasure. Doc, I got to shake your hand because it's so wonderful. And let's give this man a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. If I may have a few more words here, yes, because today I did not expect to be here doing this today. My brother, Kenny Harris, he came to visit me a couple of months ago. He was in Charlotte for NAACP conference. And when he got back, he asked me about coming here to do a book signing. Now, I already did one last year at Miss Felinda's bookstore. And so it wasn't on my mind to come back here and do another one. And he asked me, and they set it up, Felinda and Kenny, and of course, with your help and aid, I greatly, greatly appreciated it. But it also, when I started about coming here, I have some great friends that have actually brought us here to share and to witness this. And Mr. Arthur Wilson, who is a Vietnam War veteran, his birthday was yesterday. And so I figured I figured it'd be good for him to come to Charleston, and we celebrated his birthday last night. And so they're here with me today, but it also provided an opportunity for them to kind of witness where we spent a great bulk of our time and where our children grew up, which was here in Charleston, South Carolina, and Somerville. And it would also give them an opportunity to meet some very crucial and very important people in my life that helped shape my life here, our life, our family's life. And they met one already who was my mentor, and he had to leave because of a closest friend's passing, Dr. Larry Ferguson. And I think you met him also here. And him and I have been aligned for 30 plus years, and he was my primary mentor here. But there were some other people that greatly impacted my life, and they just walked in. That Mr. James Turner. That's it. Don't be looking back, JT. Mr. James Turner. He was an accountant, and we worked together at the State Department. And him and I just connected as soon as he got here. As a matter of fact, I performed his wedding with his lovely bride, Sharon, in Montgomery, Alabama. How many years ago, JT? 18 years ago, Diane and I went to Montgomery and performed his wedding, him and Sharon's wedding. So I'm glad you were able to make it, JT, and also former church member. And a gentleman that JT, I think, is in my book. Artie's in my book. And another gentleman sitting right back in the back right there, Chief Joseph Thomas. And he has been a long time mentor, military mentor to me. And I highlight him primarily because it was later in my military career. I got promoted to senior master sergeant here at Charleston Air Force Base. And immediately, because the slot wasn't for a senior, they started getting me assignments. I was initially supposed to go out to Travis Air Force Base in California. And eventually, there was some things going on health-wise in our family, and they said, okay, you don't have to go to Travis, but you got to go to McGuire Air Force Base. I was looking over a packet that I wrote everyone in I could possibly write: Secretary of the Air Force, Senator Strom Thurmond, and all of these other folks at the time. I wanted to get out of it. I did not want to go to New Jersey. I did not, and Chief Joseph Thomas, he heard me out. He thought that I threatened him when I came over there and told him I didn't want to go. And he heard me out, and he listened to all my appeals, saw all my appeals and everything, and it came down to a Friday afternoon. And I got the last letter saying, all your appeals have been denied. You will report to McGuire Air Force Base a week from this Friday. This was in 1997. And I went to McGuire, and it wound up being the best 2-year period of my military career at the end. A couple of years later, Chief Thomas and I crossed. And he told me something that utterly surprised me. He said it came down to his decision about whether or not I was to go. He could have vetoed that, and I would have retired as a master sergeant. Chief, I said I was going to do this. Would you come up here, please?
I'm going to call you Sergeant Grisby instead of Dr. Grisby because
Okay.
I don't really know Dr. Grisby, but I'm very familiar with Sergeant Grisby, Senior Master Sergeant Grisby. He was probably one of the sharpest senior NCOs we had in the Air Force at the time. He was excellent at his job. When you saw Darrel coming around, it was like a light around him. He just lit up wherever we went. He was always so positive. So when Senior Master Sergeant Grisby came in my office, I must admit he was a little upset. And I was following him. I was tracking with him real well, and I was leaning towards putting his personal situation ahead of the needs of the Air Force. But he made the mistake of telling me that he was going to give up his Senior Master Sergeant stripe to keep from doing his job. And that's when he turned the lights off for me. We needed him. We needed people like him at McGuire. McGuire was probably one of the worst bases in the Air Force at the time. So we needed the best leadership there. And I was very much aware of that. So I wasn't a mean old man, but I was a good senior NCO. And Darrel, I know you wasn't happy with me, but I'm sure glad you went. I know you made a difference. And he did come back a couple of years later. When he came in the office, I had to grab my hammer because I thought he was coming back for retaliation. And I just had to let him know I was very proud of him. I'm still very proud of you. Thank you for including me in your book. But you have been a strength and a bright light for a lot of people. I always set the standards high. Darrel always exceeded the standards and raised the bar every time. So thank you. Thank you for being you. And I'm going to sit down now because, see, I don't want them to see me. The person everybody think is hardcore, I don't want to shed no tears. So thank you.
Wow, this has been powerful, poignant for such a time as this. Thank you so much, Dr. Grisby, and thank you, Mr. Mills. This is wonderful. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. We're going to do some Q&A with the audience now. If you have a question, please just raise your hand. I'll acknowledge you and state your question. Does anyone?
How has the role of women and have women played a vital part to helping you in your career, in the military, etc.?
It's interesting you say that. Most of my supervisors in the Air Force were women. So I never had any problem working for women. And I know they are, and were at that time extremely gifted, extremely accomplished, and that stretched up into me working for the U.S. State Department Financial Services, Global Financial Services. She was my supervisor for at least 17 years. And so I never had any problems working for women at all. And I make mention of the African American female pilots in my book. There's an organization now that's called Sisters of the Skies. That is an organization of black female pilots. So I made sure that they were acknowledged in the book also. So no, I never had any problems. I mean, I was outnumbered when I started having children. I got 2 daughters, and so it was 3 women at home. So I didn't have any problem with that. My first grandchild is a daughter. She's 14 now, and she challenges me to the day. So I have no problem with that at all. And I acknowledge their strength, and I push them to exceed and to excel. And both of our daughters have excelled greatly. No, they would not go. They would not go. I tried to steer them in that direction, but they would not go. One of them is a school teacher and curriculum development specialist in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. The other one works for Deloitte, which is a project management company up in Alexandria, Virginia. So they are doing exceedingly well.
My question is, for a generation such as mine, what and how, because sometimes we get stuck, complacent. We know this information, we know how to do, or we know that it's burning on the inside of us to do a book or a business or whatever that is, but what made you push past all of that, your military career, your family, your upbringing and everything, and go forth with sharing your story with us?
That's interesting. Again, all the things that were going on with George Floyd at the time. And I was watching television, and my granddaughter was at our house. And I don't even remember what was being shown, but it was talking about him. And I broke down and I started crying. And my granddaughter witnessed this, which led her to have her own march in her neighborhood. She led her own march in the neighborhood. And she said she didn't like to see her G-Papa crying. And so I started thinking, what more can I do? Because once we retire, and I was retired twice, so you have a decision to make whether you're going to be at ease in Zion. And there's no rest for us that came out of the era that we came. We just don't stop. I'm a child. For all the speeches and stuff I've done over the years, I'll start out in my resume. I'm a child of the civil rights movement, and because of that, my path was ordained, and so I just can't stop. I can't stop. I feel like I'm a recruiter for the Air Force. Everywhere I go, I find out these young men are going in. I get them a copy of my book. I just heard from one that just got out of basic training that I gave a book to 3 months ago, and he thanked me. He said the book helped him in his journey getting through basic training. That's because I want to see those coming behind me do better, aim higher, and excel so they can be the examples for their children and their children's children also. Because if it wasn't for the legacy of some of those that I encountered in the Air Force, I wouldn't be here now doing what I do, learning. My brother right there, Eric Jones, he's another fellow Air Force comrade that we served together here out at Charleston Air Force Base. So thank you, Eric, for coming today. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Regret, but there's anything that you feel that you would redo or want to do again or make better, or just refocus on that if you could change it, what would it be?
The acceptance rates of enlisted people that are, especially African Americans, that are trying to get commission in their particular military service. Just the other day, I was looking through a packet of I keep everything. And Diane will tell you, I have stuff from my high school days and her high school days and everything. I was looking. I have a whole container of all my Air Force information, and there were literally up to almost 50 people that wrote recommendations for me to be accepted at officer training school, and for whatever reason, I didn't get accepted. I even tried to go over to the Navy because Navy at that time, I'd been in about 10 years. Navy was looking for African Americans for commissioning opportunities. That didn't get approved. But later on, I found out in my military records after I retired that there was some captain sitting at headquarters that wrote a letter and put in my file that they didn't think I should be allowed this opportunity. Wow. Because I was just doing it to get out of the Air Force. Didn't know it. Wow. So there are people that are for you that you know. There are folks that are not for you that you don't know. And some of them will not even be in your circle, but they'll be setting up in staff positions. And they'll stamp you or deny you. And so I am thankful, and I had this conversation the other day, I'm thankful that the way it turned out was the way it was supposed to turn out. Because I could have gotten commission, and I could have got riffed doing a drawdown or reduction in force. So I was allowed to stay in and spend my 25 years. Chief, they asked me to, because when I went to McGuire, they took everything from me. They said, you will not be promoted. You will not go TDY. You will not go to the Senior NCO Academy. You're going to go up there and do your time and retire and bring yourself back home. A year after I was there, I got called over to the head shed. And they said, Sergeant Grisby, from all reports from your commander, you have done an excellent job here at McGuire. We want you to stay in the Air Force. You will be a chief. We will give you everything back that we took from you if you decide to stay. My mind was already made up. I was going to retire. When I retired, my wife's mother was dealing with dementia. So immediately when I retired, she came to live with us. So it was ordained. I could have stayed in. I could have made chief. But as I tell a lot of military members, you know when you know that it's time to go.
All right.
Yes.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Today, for me,
Take your time.
It's all right.
listening to what you had to say has been the most stimulating conversation I've heard. This sunk in me from the concept of how the book was written to the experiences that the Colonel had said. And I can identify with him because I was field artillery and I knew there was no African Americans at Fort Sill. I was there. 1975. I did 6 years there. I've listened to what you had said. I've watched your life. And for you two to come together like you did, this was amazing, stimulating, educational, and very beneficial to anyone that was here. I feel sorry for the person that was not here. This was a great event. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for that, my good brother. You know, but when I look at, because I remember from Loring Air Force Base, Maine, down to Charleston, and ever since, you know, we've been having our conversation, I don't remember seeing a black or brown senior master sergeant in that day. So that's why I was excited to be. I don't remember. Senior. That's a big deal. I mean, talking about 1970, between 75 and 80? You didn't see that. I know I didn't. So I had to share that. I mean, it's inspirational. I'm just telling you, Doc, I understand what that means. I understand. I lived it. I watched it. I was looking for it.
All right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Many things that you guys spoke about, and the Colonel, they spoke about color barriers and so forth, but I believe that what you both said opened up at least pathways and journeys for everyone, not just our color. And what we could leave here as racist as the racist people, as ignorant and tunnel vision as those who are out there today. But I think because of what you said, we're going to leave here, and all that you said, we're going to open our arms and wrap them around white, black, brown, Latino, and because God said so. So what you have experienced and what we experience in life, you've allowed God to take every part of your life, whether it was good, bad. And as Romans 8:28, he takes it all for you, for us. And guess what? It becomes something so different, like the fish and the loaves of bread. It's just a little, but now we get a chance to spread it out, and God takes ordinary and makes it extraordinary. And that's what you do.
Earlier, I forgot to acknowledge Belinda. You've heard her name called, Belinda Miller with Turning Page Bookshop. Belinda, thank you once again for bringing us another great author. We were delighted to host. And she's got, Dr. Grisby is selling his book, so we need y'all to buy books. Dr. Grisby, we're going to move you out to the Commons area and have you sign. We have a table set up for you there. But before you go, I have a little presentation for you and Mr. Mills.